Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And I just want to take a second to welcome all of you all. There's nothing, from a committee standpoint that's so important to look out and see all of the hats out there roaming the buildings, talking to people, talking about how important these issues are so that we keep our promises. So again, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a hassle, but there's nothing that's more important. So thank you very much. I want to read a letter from our chairman who, because of recuperating right now, can't be with us. So let me go ahead and read this, and I'm going to put it in the record. Welcome to the hundreds of VFW members and auxiliary members in attendance, and a special welcome to the Georgia State Commander, William Sandberg, and the rest of the Georgia delegation. You guys want to raise your hands so we can give a shout out to the Georgia? Very good. I regret that I am unable to attend the hearing today as I am at home recovering from back surgery the rest of this week before returning to Washington, D.C. I look forward to returning with a new and improved back to continue working harder than ever on behalf of our veterans. As I said at Secretary Shulkin's confirmation hearing, we're about making health care more available to veterans through care in both the private sector and the VA. We don't want to privatize the VA by any means. We want to empower it. I look forward to working collaboratively with you and other stakeholders to help improve the care and services for our veterans. So I ask unanimous consent that we put that into the record. I will now yield to the ranking member, Senator Tester.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commander Duffy, thank you for being here today with your leadership team. We very much appreciate it. I want to recognize, and if you guys would stand up, I'd appreciate it, Jack Hawley, the VFW State Commander for Montana, as well as Tim Peters, Art Whittam, Virginia Arnold, and Bob Schwagel. You guys stand, please. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank you for what you do every day for Montana's veterans. Commander Duffy, we are here because Congress should take its cues from you. The VFW provides a critical perspective on how to best address veterans' challenges. Your members have left the safety of our shores to serve our nation overseas in uniform. They also provide critical services every single day to veterans and families in Montana and across this country, and I want to thank you for your continued commitment and service. As I told the American Legion this morning, we hold these hearings because only the VSOs, and not partisan political groups or their pundits on cable, can help Congress focus its oversight and legislative efforts to ensure that veterans have access to quality care and benefits. That means taking cues from you on how to hold the VA accountable, ensure that the VA has the capacity to meet the needs of all veterans, and fixing choice in community care. You're going to hear from a lot of folks today about how much they unconditionally support veterans. While showing appreciation for those words, I hope you'll also hold them accountable for their actions. It's a critical time for the VA. Today, it is confronted with looming and dramatic funding shortfalls and a choice program that, at least in Montana, is just flat not working. Many veterans have lost faith in the VA over the past few years. We've won some of them back, but much more work needs to be done. Rather than just giving a veteran a card to seek care in the private sector, the path forward should be an integrated network of VA and community providers. This means the VA should continue to serve as a coordinator and a primary provider of care while the private sector fills in the gaps. Commander Duffy, I want to commend your organization for its work not only on our CARE 2017, your recently published report on veterans health care, but also for your work on the independent budget. It is clear that the VFW is a leader when it comes to gauging feedback from veterans and outlining an appropriate path forward on the delivery of care. Your input, your guidance will be critically important as we move forward. So hopefully Congress will spend less time patting itself on the back and more time rolling up its collective sleeves to enact meaningful reforms on behalf of the veterans of this nation. I know it's what you expect, but it's also what you deserve, and I look forward to that discussion today. On a sidebar, I want to tell you it was some 48 years ago that a VFW member who happened to be my bus driver asked me to play taps at the veterans' funerals across our county. It was for that reason that VFW bus driver and good guy set me on the road to politics. Some might like that, some might not. But the fact is, it was that experience, and what an incredible experience it has been in my lifetime, where I played taps for many of the greatest generation, even a few World War I members back then, and gave me the self-confidence to be able to serve here today. So you've helped more than just your veteran population, and I want to thank you very much for that. Commander Duffy, welcome. I appreciate your presence being here with your team.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm walking in, just coming back from another event, and let me just say this, and seldom do we get a group like this in front of us, and I want to take the opportunity to first of all say thank you to you for your service to our country, but second of all, thank you to your families. I think we sometimes forget to say thank you to the whole crew because, as you all know, this is a team effort. And so let me just begin by saying I most certainly appreciate everything that you've done and your families have done as well. There's a couple of items that I have a real concern about, and I most certainly hope that you will be supportive of our efforts to make some modifications. I would hope that as we discuss items this afternoon, that you would take a particular interest in the Emergency Care Fairness Act and the implementation, which is coming around, and offer full support for our implementation of that particular item. And we most certainly appreciate all of you being here and your direct participation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll give back my time and you can move forward, sir. Thank you.
Senator Brown.
Thank you, and I appreciate very much, Mr. Chairman, saying a few words, and Senator Tester and Senator Rounds. And I just had a good conversation with an Ohioan by the name of Keith Hartman, who was Ohio is not every state so blessed to have in every county a veteran service commission and a full-time veteran who is serving veterans, and whether it's a small county like his in Western Ohio or a larger county which has a number of people, and it's meant all the difference in the world in veteran services. And I would thank him, and I know others of you in this crowd have served in that capacity. You served our country, and then you came back and full-time served veterans. A couple of points I will make briefly is the importance of our making sure that the VA is not privatized. I know there are people in this institution that would like to privatize Medicare and privatize Social Security and privatize public education and privatize the VA. And you can count on, I know Senator Isaacson has spoken out in opposition to that, as Senator Tester has and I have. And I ask now Secretary Shulkin his position on it, both one-on-one and then in front of this committee. And he adamantly, he stressed his opposition to privatization. I know that's something that's so important to all of you. And of course, I know what's happened in VAs all over my state with the backlog, and we commit to you that we need to do a better job than we have. I think we've had some pretty good VA secretaries with McDonald and with Shinseki and back before that, and now I'm hopeful with Shulkin, but we've got to get to work on that. So Commander Duffy, thank you for your work and your leadership, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to point out that the House is having votes and will join us shortly, but now I would like to yield to the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, who's going to introduce the National Commander.
Thank you, Senator Bozeman. Colleagues, it's a genuine honor to be here today with a friend of very long standing, known for many, many years, who has ascended to the top position of the VFW. Brian Duffy is an outstanding Kentuckian. As I said, it's an honor to be here today to introduce him. He's a powerful advocate for our nation's veterans. He's served since last summer as Commander-in-Chief of the VFW of the United States, the nation's oldest war veterans organization. This is a major responsibility, but it comes easily to a man who has dedicated his entire life to the service of others, first in the Air Force and now to his fellow veterans. Since joining the VFW, Brian has tirelessly worked on behalf of his brothers and sisters in uniform to honor their service and their sacrifice. When he was elected to lead the VFW last year, the first Operation Desert Storm veteran to serve as commander, I knew he would make us all very, very proud. I've quoted him before, but it's worth doing again. Brian calls the VFW an organization of doers, and an organization comprised of patriots. I wholeheartedly agree, and I can think of no better example of those traits than the man sitting right next to me right now. As commander, Brian passionately advocates for veterans every day. As the founder of the Bluegrass chapter of the Honor Flight, he's made it possible for hundreds of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veterans to travel to Washington. While here, they visit the memorials built to honor their service and experience the gratitude of our entire nation. These trips involve immense amounts of logistical and financial planning, and Brian has worked to make sure that Kentucky's veterans have the ability to make this important trip at no cost to themselves. He's also committed himself to the challenges of younger veterans, promoting policies to raise awareness about wounds inflicting the generation which has fought the war on terror. As an avid hockey fan, Brian has organized several Warrior Cup Challenge hockey games to support the Fort Knox Warrior Transition Battalion and to encourage veterans to join the VFW. I also want to recognize another friend, Carl Kalin, who serves as the Chief of Staff to the Commander-in-Chief. Brian and Carl make an incredible team, and I'm grateful for Carl's presence here today as well. Brian and his wife, Jean, have been leaders in the VFW literally for years, and I know they'll continue to do great things for our nation's veterans. So I'm grateful to Commander Duffy's selfless service, and as I said earlier, this is not just a situation where I'm showing up for a constituent, which I would probably do anyway, but this is showing up for somebody that I've known for a long time, have great admiration for, and we're so proud of the fact that this terrific, outstanding Kentuckian is now the national commander. So with that, I give you Brian Duffy.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator McConnell, very much. Commander Duffy, what I'd like to do is go to Senator Manchin, and again, I'd like to do that in the sense, hopefully we'll get some of our House guys done with their votes so that they can filter back in and hear, most of your testimony. So, Senator Manchin.
Well, let me say, Commander, congratulations and thank you for the job you do and the entire staff there. I thank all of you. VFW is the heartbeat of most of our communities throughout West Virginia because we have such a large veterans population, as you know, and we're very appreciative. I would like, if any of my veterans from West Virginia are still here, I'd like for them to stand. I have taunt, are they here? They had to beat the weather? They're tough cadres. Hard to tell what happened to them. Anyway, they were here, and they've spent a few days with us, and I really appreciate it. We had Todd Kingsbury and Bob Carruthers and Chuck Haney and Vicki Stoniker and Pam King. They were all here, and I appreciate very much them. Let me say I want to thank our witnesses for the testimony before this joint hearing, and our colleagues will be coming from the House shortly. I also want to commend your commitment to our veterans. Together, we can help ensure that our veterans receive the recognition and assistance that they need and deserve. And our great state of West Virginia values our veteran population, which encompasses 9% of our entire population. 9% of all the people who live in my state of West Virginia are veterans, and that's something. We understand the challenges of rural health care is good or even better than the majority of the nation because we are a rural state, period. I don't have a town, or I say a town. I'm a state of a lot of towns. The largest city I have is 50,000 in Charleston and 50,000 in Huntington. And then from there, it goes all the way down. I met with the VFW veterans from my state yesterday. They all came in, and I appreciate that very much. And I know that they represent my entire state well. I want to thank them for what they do in West Virginia. I want you to rest assured that no senator wants wholesale privatization of the VA. I have not heard that word, privatize the VA. You hear other people talk about it, but not an elected member that knows the value of our veterans. We must invest in the VA hospitals to update them. I don't think we're going to see new buildings of hospitals going up. I don't think you'll see many of that happening. I think you will see us reinvesting in what we have to make the best of the best and make them better. I think also with our choice, we'll keep improving and working on choice to where you as a veteran should be able to go to the best care that you desire and the best care that you have confidence in. anywhere that it's available, and is do it on a priority basis, not having to wait forever to get served. Those are the things that we strive for, and I think that we'll do that. Across America, we're fighting a challenging battle against opiates. My state has been affected more than any other state in the nation. I lost 630 West Virginians. We have the #1 death rate of opiate addiction and overdose. And then, unfortunately, it affects our veterans, our service people, too. We need to find a pathway forward. We need to make sure that our fighting men and women aren't being overprescribed, if you will. They aren't being over-medicated. There's other ways for the pain and the stress to be handled. And the VA is trying. They're on the front edge of this right now. So I applaud and appreciate everything they're doing. I talked to Bob McDonald when he was there. He got it, and he started working in a different direction. Dr. Shulkin is going to be a great VA leader, I believe. Well, he's the one person that got unanimous consent. We haven't had that happen here since I've been here. So God bless the veterans for allowing us to come together as a body. You really make us bipartisan. Without the veterans, we wouldn't have a bipartisan movement, if you will. And we're interested in really how we can work together. I think that when you come here and you come the way you do come in force, and you come to visit all of your elected representatives, it means so much more to see you all in person and see the real people that are involved in the real lives that are going to be affected if we do or do not do something. There's a lot at the table right now. I mean, you know, the Affordable Care Act is going to affect a lot of people and a lot of families in many different ways. I think all of us want to improve it and have better quality health care. We just maybe have a different direction. I would like to see us improve it and repair it. I really would. I think that we can do that and come together, and that would be great for our communities. Again, I've always looked for a way to say thank you for the job that you have done and the life you've given me. My grandfather was in the Army, World War I. My father in World War II. My uncle was in the Navy. I had another uncle in the Marines. And I can only look at that generation, look at all of you. Anytime I see a person that's been a veteran or a person with a uniform, I speak to a lot of school children, and I go and tell them, I said, whenever you see a person in uniform, that person has decided that you mean more than they do to themselves for your country. They're willing to take a bullet for you. They're willing to defend you with their life. You tell me how many people you have in your family that'll do that, let alone someone you don't even know. That's how special the veterans are to me, to West Virginians, to every senator up here. So I say thank you. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for continuing to keeping us informed. Thank you.
Commander Duffy, you're welcome to give your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Members of the Senate and House Veterans Affairs Committee, I'm honored to have the privilege of introducing the national officers of the VFW and our auxiliary. Mr. Chairman, please allow me to ask those I'm about to be introducing to remain standing. And I wish to request that the audience hold its applause until all have been introduced. I'm pleased to be joined today by the National President of our auxiliary, Colette Bishop from Ohio, the National Auxiliary Secretary-Treasurer, Jan Owens from South Carolina, the Auxiliary Legislative Ambassador, Betty Jean Bajetsky from Pennsylvania, and my wife, Jean, from Kentucky, the Senior Vice Commander-in-Chief's wife, Mary Lou Harmon from Ohio, the Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief's wife, Mary Lawrence from New Mexico. The Senior Vice Commander-in-Chief is with us as well, Keith Harmon from Ohio, the Junior Vice Commander-in-Chief, Vincent B.J. Lawrence from New Mexico. Sitting beside me, the Adjutant General, Robert E. Wallace from New Jersey, the Quartermaster General, Deborah Anderson from Missouri, Judge Advocate General, G. Anthony Tony Wolski from Colorado, our Surgeon General, Dr. James Doctorolo from Minnesota, National Chaplain, Reverend Peter Hook from Pennsylvania, the National Chief of Staff, Carl J. Kalin from Kentucky, the Inspector General, Harold Hal Roche from Virginia, and the Chairman of the National Legislative Committee, Mark Alvarez from Florida, Director, VFW National Legislative Service, Carlos Fuentes from Maryland, and Director, VFW National Veterans Service, Gerald T. Menard from Virginia. And I would like to also recognize the presence of many of our past Commander-in-Chiefs, if they would stand as well. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Rowe, Ranking Member Tester and Waltz, members of the Senate House and Veterans Affairs Committee, it is my honor to represent nearly 1.7 million members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States and our auxiliary. As the VFW National Commander, I have had the privilege of traveling throughout our country and indeed throughout the world to visit our troops, our veterans, and their families, to discuss with them their issues and their concerns. An important issue the VFW needs your help with right off is to address sequestration. The threat of sequestration and the draconian spending caps limits our nation's ability to provide service members, veterans, and their families the care and benefits that they have earned and that they deserve. Sequestration also degrades training and limits the resources our service members need to successfully defend this nation and defeat our enemies. You know, when the 112th Congress created it in 2011, Russia was not in Ukraine, and China was not building islands out of rocks. Iran and North Korea were not as emboldened as they are today, and the Islamic State did not exist. Yet here we are, 6 years later, and our brave men and women in uniform are still operating under your budget acts called sequestration. Let me be perfectly clear as the Commander-in-Chief of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. This Congress must end sequestration. I also hear from wounded, ill, and injured veterans who are waiting far too long for medical appointments or for disability claim decisions. And they are concerned with access and the availability of mental health providers. And along with the VFW Auxiliary President, I am proud to say that the VFW has partnered with several of the nation's leading organizations to change the direction, to help change the narrative in which our nation discusses mental health issues. The VFW is teamed with Given Hour providers, One Mind researchers, the peer-to-peer group, Patients Like Me, the family caregiver-focused Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the nation's largest pharmacy, Walgreens, and the Department of Veterans Affairs to promote mental health awareness and to dispel the misconceptions about seeking help and to connect more veterans with life-saving resources. And that includes the peer-to-peer support every member of the VFW and our auxiliary can provide, which I can tell you is a powerful service that works. Mental wellness is an ongoing VFW campaign, and we call on Congress to do its part to ensure the VA is properly resourced so that more veterans can obtain timely and quality care. In the past 2 years, the VFW has also worked to evaluate the VA's ability to care for our veterans. The VFW did this work through the lens of our members to ensure that our recommendations are veteran-centric and align with the views, the preferences, and the experiences of those the system was created to serve. Now, the good news is that VFW members across the country are noticing improvements. In the VFW's latest healthcare survey, nearly 60% of responding veterans noticed an improvement. Some even said that their VA facility is not in need of improvements. Veterans tell us that the VA has improved its customer service by being more caring and more friendly. And veterans also reported waiting less time for their appointments and they commended the VA for making several changes that have improved the overall patient experience. But to be clear, the VFW is not content with maintaining the status quo. However, as high users of the VA healthcare system, we know that implementing system-wide changes takes time, which is why we are pleased to see that the Senate confirmed Dr. Shulkin unanimously. And we look forward to working with Secretary Shulkin to ensure he is able to succeed in what has become the most scrutinized job in this country. The VA still has a long way to go. It needs to hire more providers, train its employees better, and hold the wrongdoers accountable, and get a handle not only on the reported backlog, but on the entire workload, and it needs to update an aging capital infrastructure. Access to outside doctors when the VA isn't able to care for veterans in a timely manner is part of the solution. However, veterans want to fix, not dismantle, the VA healthcare system. And we thank Congress and the VA for making several of the VFW suggested improvements to the Choice program. But it continues to face several challenges, and it must be improved before it is made permanent. Congress must eliminate the secondary pay requirement under the Choice program, and Congress must fix how the VA obligates funds for community care. Congress must authorize the VA to enter into provider agreements so that it can stop losing 200 community nursing home partners a year. And finally, Congress must repeal outdated laws that hinders the VA's ability to share medical documentation with private sector doctors. Congress and the VA must take the lessons learned from various community care programs and create a single, sustainable program that integrates the private sector into the VA healthcare system. The VFW has supported a number of bills that would move towards this goal. However, Congress's self-imposed budget rules have kept such bills from becoming law. The Choice program is set to expire soon, but Congress has not acted on a permanent solution. Instead of waiting until the 11th hour, which will limit the VA's ability to serve veterans, Congress must provide the VA the resources it needs to continue this important program under the existing authorities. And Congress must also pass strong accountability legislation to ensure Secretary Shulkin is able to discipline employees who endanger the lives of veterans, period. But along with the authority to fire bad employees, the VA also needs the ability to quickly hire, to properly compensate, and retain high-quality employees. Congress must improve VA's hiring and retention authorities. The VFW also strongly supports the full expansion of caregiver benefits to all generations of veterans. It's well past time that Congress recognize that pre-9/11 veterans also need caregiver benefits, which keeps them out of costly inpatient nursing facilities, and to relieve the burden on that caring family member or members who have suffered long enough. Another issue that has remained unresolved for far too long is the backlog of appeals, which now stands at more than 500,000. 500,000 waiting. And Congress must act quickly to pass the appeals modernization legislation that was developed with direct feedback and support from the VFW, Congress, and the VA. To better manage its disability claims workload, the VA developed the National Work Queue, which moves work around the VA based on capacity. And the VFW understands, and we support this concept. However, the current system does not always permit VFW-accredited service officers the ability and the time to review rating decisions for accuracy. These reviews are the final quality check that claims receive prior to being finalized, which helps the VA avoid unnecessary errors and subsequent appeals. The VA must allow the VFW service officer who initiated the claim to review the proposed rating decisions. Moving forward, Congress must also provide adequate resources to improve VA facilities and outreach for our women veterans. These are the fastest growing population within the military and the veteran community. The VFW is also concerned with findings from recent studies that point to higher rates of infertility and pregnancy complication for our women veterans who were deployed to the Gulf War, and also those who were deployed to the current wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Congress must commission research to determine if those conditions are associated with their military service. When servicemen and women become ill due to toxic exposures, it is incumbent upon a grateful nation to care for them. And that is why the VFW supports expanding Agent Orange presumption to our Blue Water Navy veterans. And that is why we support researching all symptoms and all conditions associated with service during the Persian Gulf War. It's also why we support properly researching and evaluating the health effects of burn pit exposure and correcting the presumptive dates for our Korean DMZ veterans. And we also support ensuring the list of presumptive conditions for Camp Lejeune is accurate and providing benefits to veterans who were exposed to radiation on Woomera Air Force Station in southern Australia. I must also mention veteran homelessness, especially those homeless vets with dependent children, which adds a unique set of challenges when obtaining VA care and VA benefits. And the VFW calls on Congress to expand the VA child care program to ensure veterans can attend their medical appointments and have access to employment training and the needed counseling service. And regarding education, a new study commissioned by our partners, the Student Veterans of America, shows that veterans outperform their civilian counterparts in higher education. And that directly translates into a successful transition back into civilian life. And that is why the VFW urges Congress to protect the integrity of the post-9/11 GI Bill as a tool to help veterans succeed after their military service. And Congress must ensure reserve service members placed on active duty for pre-planned missions or to heal from injuries sustained during active duty accrue GI Bill eligibility. Congress must also close the loopholes currently exploited by predatory institutions who charge exorbitant fees. And Congress must provide full GI Bill eligibility to active, Guard, and Reserve veterans who serve in a combat zone. In closing, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the sacred mission of recovering America's POWs and MIAs. This mission is very important to the VFW, and we call on Congress to fully fund the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency and its support organizations. I thank you again for the opportunity to represent the nation's largest and oldest major combat veterans organization. We are the VFW, and no one does more for veterans. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Commander. You're leading a rowdy bunch. That's good. I know.
You're energized, sir.
Well, that's excellent. I'll tell you, it's great to look out and just see standing room only. I now yield myself 5 minutes for questions. Again, I want to thank you for being here, and also want to thank your team for the great job that they do representing you and interacting with Congress, and are just always available. The folks from Arkansas, Rosalind Cox and her team, you guys want to wave? Or? Very good. Roz and her team do a tremendous job helping veterans, but not only helping veterans, like so many of you are such a big part of the community, and we really do appreciate that and appreciate all of your all service in so many different ways. When I visited with several of our veterans from Arkansas yesterday, we talked about suicide prevention efforts and ways we can improve access to meaningful mental health services and strengthen suicide prevention awareness among our veterans in our veteran communities. Oftentimes, the very folks we need to reach out most aren't formally affiliated with the VA, and many may be unknown to veterans groups. In your prepared testimony, you talked about the VFW's campaign to change direction and your outreach to nearly 17,000 service members, veterans and their families, which is so commendable, in all 50 states and in D.C. What plans do you have to expand the campaign, and how can we help you in doing that?
Thank you, sir. You know, it's been very successful, combined with the auxiliary to the VFW and harnessing the membership of the VFW. No group can relate to a veteran in distress as easy or as effectively as a fellow veteran. So understanding that the veterans of foreign wars, that many of the veterans that are seated behind me have gone off and they've deployed, they've been on the pointy end of the spear. They themselves perhaps have suffered in the past or are continuing to suffer from some of the mental health wounds from wars and that, they can relate. So just that simple peer-to-peer, a simple program, we're able to identify some of the 5 basic indices of when somebody's in distress. It can be so powerful, and we can multiply that through an organization with 1.7 million members. I can tell you, sir, I was in Tennessee, and it was just starting, and I was trying to figure out with this program, how do you measure the success? What metric do I use to say that a VFW mental health awareness program can have a positive effect? And obviously, the extreme to helping somebody with a mental health issue is when they make that choice to end their life, that suicide decision. And I had a VFW and an auxiliary member call me aside, and they said, "Commander, it's working." And I said, "What's working?" We had a veteran in the post the other day, and because of the program, because we had already had some basic education, we were able to work with that veteran. We were able to discuss some of the basic primer points of helping them. We were able to give that veteran some resources that they could work with in the community. That veteran went home, and unfortunately, that veteran still had some lingering thoughts of suicide, and that veteran went downstairs to the basement. The veteran took a gun out of a safe and came back upstairs. But the good news is, because of these programs, that veteran put the gun down on the kitchen table, picked up the literature that had been provided by the VFW and the auxiliary member at the post, and thankfully, the next thing that veteran picked up was the phone and got help. So a community-based initiative such as the VFW and auxiliaries mental health awareness program can literally save lives, and it has.
That's excellent, and certainly a very powerful story. And hopefully we can help you again, expand the program, and then also not only expand your program, but these are the kind of things that the VA needs to be doing. The tremendous delays that we have in appointments at times, and certainly VA is working hard, and we're doing a better job of that. But mental health is just such a huge issue, not only within the VA community, but also throughout the country. But we just really want to compliment you on throwing a program out there that you know, as your testimony then, the story that you just told indicates that it is changing lives and saving lives. Ranking Member Tester.
Thank you, Senator Bozeman, and thank you, Commander Duffy, for your remarks, and thank you for your last statement. I think that anything that we can do and help you to help remove the stigma around from mental health, to make sure that those soldiers pick up the phone is, I mean, that's just good news. To get them the help they need to get them on recovery. I want to commend your organization for its work on our Care 2017. It's a recently published report on veterans' health, and the report says that veterans want to fix, not dismantle VA health care. Now, I just want you to flesh this out a little bit more. When I read that, fix instead of dismantle, how I interpret that is that the VA is the primary provider for health care to the veterans, and the private sector fills in the cracks. Is that the same way you read it, or do you read it a different way?
Senator, we see it that the VA system itself provides quality care. The issue has always been the accessibility. And if we can increase the accessibility, and we are on a positive trajectory, as that report shows, of increasing the accessibility, more and more veterans will be able to get that quality care. And part of the accessibility, quite honestly, goes to the ability for the VA to hire the folks that they need, the clinicians, the doctors, and those that support those positions. And currently, as I said in my opening statement, some of the procedures and hiring on the federal level aren't as nimble as they are in the civilian population. So from a competitive standpoint, whether it's the compensation or just the process of bringing these doctors on board, the VA needs to have the ability to reform to be able to bring the professionals on board so the accessibility for the veterans is there, and that is part of it.
One of the things, I mean, you talked about hiring, and one of the things that I believe I talked with the members from Montana about is that, and I appreciate you bringing up the red tape. Salaries may be a problem, but there's opportunity to boost those up. But we've got to make sure they have the budget ability to do that. And cutting the red tape on how long it takes to hire, because it's ridiculous, quite frankly. But there's also the issue of accountability. And sometimes accountability is in direct conflict with the ability to hire, if you know what I mean. Because I think people want to have their due process. By the same token, the folks aren't cutting the mustard, ought to be showing the door. What's the VA's thoughts on that?
You want the VFW's thoughts on that?
Sorry, the VFW. Shulkin would have been honored by me saying that.
You know, listen, it really comes down to a simple thing. We will not accept, will never accept any veteran that is not treated properly. We certainly will never accept a VA employee knowingly not taking care of a veteran or actively doing something that is defined as wrongdoing or malfeasance. I mean, that's it. As far as the hiring side of it, yes, it obviously compounds it. If I have to send somebody from accountability, the discipline side of it, and up to and including, by God, if it's needed, we should do it, terminate them. It creates an opening. It creates then that vacuum that we need, the abilities I just spoke about before, to hire folks in there. It also speaks to, quite honestly, that in the VA system, they can't hire somebody, they can't build a bench, they can't hire somebody until there's a vacancy. Right. So there is no ability to overlap to be able to bridge when you have to make some of those tough but required decisions.
Yeah, right on. So thank you. Could you talk a little bit, because I just want to get it in the record, the VFW's perspective on VA being the primary payer. What advantages does that give directly to the veterans if the VA is designated as primary payer?
Well, I think quite honestly, first and foremost, it gives them the peace of mind that when they go out, if it's in the choice program, that they don't have some paper chasing them, some bill chasing them. I mean, you know, when the veteran made the deal with the government, to put on the uniform of the country. Nobody talked to them then about some sort of a secondary payer program that was going to chase them years later. As I remember the deal, I put the uniform on, you're going to take care of me. My government's going to have my back. I was not told that somewhere years later on that I would be subjected to the bureaucracy and the administrative shuffle of bills coming for care that I earned.
I appreciate that, Commander, and I appreciate you getting that on the record. Thank you very, very much.
Representative Radewagen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first thank you all for your service to our great nation. It is that sacrifice that allows us to be here today, and we are all most grateful to you. I also want to thank you all for being here to inform Congress of the VFW's legislative priorities for the 115th Congress. Your advocacy on behalf of our nation's veterans is legendary, and I know that I can speak for everyone here this afternoon when I say that this entire committee on both sides of the aisle are fully dedicated to ensuring that the federal government lives up to our end of the bargain when it comes to providing the best resources and services to our veterans. As a member who represents a United States territory, I'm particularly interested to hear about your priorities for those veterans who live in either rural or remote locations, such as my home district of American Samoa, where our people enlist into this U.S. Armed Forces at a rate higher than that of any other state or territory in the nation. This is a fact that we are very proud of. In the past, our veterans in these rural and remote locations have often been denied the services they've earned, not purposefully, but often they do not know the resources available to them or must travel long distances to receive services. I look forward to working with the VFW and other VSOs to improve the outreach to these areas in partnership with the VA, and we welcome your input in this mission. I want to mention also that we have an active VFW chapter in American Samoa, and we're very proud of that fact. So thank you again for being here today. Your work is so important in ensuring that Congress is fully informed on those issues that are most important to our veterans. Thank you again for your service to our grateful nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I can't tell you, or I can tell you, you know how powerful the picture is of you, all of you being in this massive room, and it sends a profound message to all of us, including my colleagues. And as the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So my thanks to every one of you, and particularly the folks from Connecticut who are here. I understand that State Commander John Schmidt and many of his team are here. If you could just stand so we can thank you for being here, all of you from Connecticut. Thank you. Thank you. Commander Duffy, thank you for your service to our nation and for your very powerful statement just now to my colleague, Senator Tester. The VFW's advocacy and other veteran service organizations has been so important in reminding us of the debt that we owe you, and you're right. It's not beneficence or charity on the part of the United States government. It is a right, and it is part of the deal that we made. In fact, the failure of our nation to keep faith with veterans is one of the reasons why I wanted to be in the United States Senate and to be on this committee, so we would do better in skill training and job opportunities, and yes, in health care, and particularly mental health care, which is so vital to addressing the hidden or invisible wounds of war. like post-traumatic stress. And as I've said before, I'm proud to say that 2 of my sons have served. One is a veteran of service in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, deployed to Afghanistan. The other is an active duty naval officer now. But so few of the nation's population has direct experience. In fact, I wear a blue star. A lot of folks will come up to me at an event and say, "Oh, is that the Connecticut flag?" And I say that with sadness, not really to amuse you, because there's so little awareness and appreciation for the families as well as the men and women who serve. So I want to thank all of your families as well, and ask you a question based on a common interest with you that I have involving women's health care, which you raised in your testimony. I noted your support for improving health care for women veterans, both in terms of tangible resources and the less tangible issues that exist with providers assuming that a female veteran is a spouse or caregiver rather than a veteran herself. And that must change. We agree, all of us in this room, I'm sure, and I hope the VFW's focus on that issue and this committee's continued outreach will help to change the dynamic. In light of the need to fill the women's health primary provider position in 18% of VA facilities across the nation, and that means 18% of facilities lack a provider of female primary care. Could you please comment on how the slow hiring process can impact the recruitment of much-needed providers such as those women healthcare providers? In other words, what can we do to accelerate that process of hiring women's healthcare providers? And is that a priority that you would urge the VA to recognize?
Thank you, Senator. And first and foremost, in regards to your family that's serving and yourself, thank you for your service. And in regards to the Blue Star, you know, that's one of the other charges of the VFW and the auxiliary. We're one of the last places that somebody can actually teach Americanism, that can actually teach some of the basics, so that the confusion that you mentioned regarding your lapel pin is a sad, you're right, it's a sad thing. In regards to the women's health part of it, we understand, I've commissioned, the previous commander-in-chiefs have commissioned committees of our female VFW members so that we can better understand. We are also growing in our ability to fully understand the population of female veterans. You know, there's, as I said in my opening statement, they are the fastest growing demographic, not just in the military, but veterans as well. So in regards to the females in the VA system and that, yeah, those female warriors that choose to want a female primary care provider should have that choice. And in regards to how do we get more of that into the VA system, again, it goes back to we have got to really focus on what the VA is able to provide to those professionals to attract them into the VA system versus going to some private medical facility. The package has to be attractive enough. The passion of medical professionals, I think, will always be there to serve veterans. I can tell you from personal experience, when I go into my VA CBOC down in Southwest Florida, when I'm in the snowbird mode, that it's incredible, the dedication of the VA folks from the first person you walk in to when I get to see my doctor itself. So to the female veteran side of it, that has to happen. We have to stop being reactive in the VA. I mean, from the standpoint that this infrastructure, 15 plus years on with the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, we're still in a reactive mode rather than a proactive mode to put these facilities in place. But I can tell you this, the VA is making some incredible advances. They are catching up, but they can't catch up probably fast enough to the trajectory growth of our female veterans.
Thank you, Commander Duffy, for that excellent answer, and thank you also for mentioning earlier the continuing need to reform the appeals process, and I'm committed to carry forward the legislation that we introduced during the last session, and want to thank the VFW for all of your support on that issue, on the veteran suicide prevention measure that we adopted, and your continuing involvement. It makes a big difference. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all of you, for your service to our nation. We really thank you for all you have been doing since you've been enlisted and fighting for our freedom. And being the only representative from the island of Puerto Rico here, for me, is an honor to be in front of you today. I don't know if you are aware that more than 211,000 Puerto Ricans have served in the armed forces. Of them, in the Philippines insurrection, 900. In the World War I, 18,000. World War II, 65,000. Korean War, 60,000. Vietnam War, 48,000. Persian Gulf, more than 400,000. 4,000. Somalia, 700. War against terrorism, over 15,000 people from Puerto Rico who serve in the armed forces. Of such amount, an estimate of 1,300 pass away while serving. So for me, it was an honor to serve in this committee. Actually, I asked to be part of this committee as the first representative from the island to be there. And one of the issues that you bring in your report, and I really want to thank you for that, because it is extensive, and it goes through the women's veterans issues, the healthcare, the caregivers, even including the reproductive area of healthcare. And I never seen that in a veterans report before. So thank you for that. And one of the issues I want to bring to you is that, and I say it this morning, more than 15,000 retirees from the island cannot benefit from TRICARE Prime just because they are living in Puerto Rico. So we are treated as an overseas territory, and most of our people can receive the same benefits, although they fight equally among the people from the mainland during their time. What's your comments on that, Commander?
Ma'am, I'm going to ask my associate here, Carlos, if he could address that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, ma'am. TRICARE is a very important benefit, and we want to make sure that our TRICARE beneficiaries are taken care of. So you have our commitment to work with DOD and the TRICARE contractors to make sure that our military retirees in Puerto Rico are taken care of.
Thank you. And I also, that we got a problem with them, of course, clinics and VA, because we are in a remote location. So most people who get a disease, a rare disease or a degenerative disease, such as Alzheimer's, had to travel to New York to receive their treatment. And that happens with a lot of different conditions in the island. And the lack of specialists, physicians, and orthopedics in the island obligates our people to move to Florida, Texas, and even New York, because they can receive the same treatment in the island. So I will commend you and ask for your help to lead our efforts to have equality for the veterans that came from Puerto Rico. Thank you. I yield back my time to adjournment.
Senator Arano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to exercise a point of personal privilege and recognize the 8 veterans from Hawaii who traveled probably, aside from our territories, the farthest to join all of us here. So with your indulgence, I'd like to recognize them: Lane Martin, Jonathan Ho'omanavanui, Norbert Enos, George Bartlett, Joseph Frank Bragg, Stanley Fernandez, Nicholas Young, Frankie Ritchie. You're all sitting back there, so why don't you get up? They're wearing lei. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to thank the VFW for being the first VSO group to formally stand behind our effort to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the Filipino World War II veterans, 200,000 of whom signed up to fight alongside our heroes in World War II. And so you were the first organization to pass a resolution in support, and it was through our combined efforts that we were able to get this legislation passed and signed into law by President Obama. We are busy. Thank you. And we're certainly now in the process of putting together all of the names and going forward so that we can appropriately recognize them with the gold medal. I have a question regarding nursing home care coverage. There is a law that currently requires VA to provide nursing home care for those seriously disabled veterans at no cost to them, and this particular law is set to expire at the end of this year. And according to VA, around 35,000 veterans nationwide and nearly 350 Hawaii veterans received care under this specific program last year, including a facility on Maui, which I recently visited last week. Commander, could you comment on the importance of extending the VA benefits and its impact on the lives of your members? Because we need to get this law reauthorized.
Ma'am, I agree with you, and even further to that point, not just should we provide long-term care for those that qualify based on 70% or a service-connected injury. I believe, quite honestly, it's in the benefit of the country, it's certainly in the benefit of the VA to look at the cost for those veterans that need the long-term care of being able to put them in long-term care versus not putting them in long-term, the burden that's on them. So I would not only support, or we would not only support your position, I think we would even go further. Veterans, when they need long-term care, it should be provided, without regard to whether they were 70% or whether they were service-connected. I'll tell you another area in that we need to address is currently we're losing over 200 nursing or long-term care facilities a year because they can no longer, the rural ones especially, they can no longer, they don't have the staff or the infrastructure to compete and submit with the federal acquisition regulation programs. We need to provide the VA a way that they can provide to these facilities a simpler ability to compete so that they can continue to be part of the long-term care answer for our veterans. Every year, 200 of them are closing. Can you imagine, with 200 closing, how many veterans every year are being forced out of the place that they have considered home, simply because there isn't the mechanics in place to get around this federal acquisition regulation similar to what we use for Medicare?
Thank you very much for pointing that out, and we'll certainly follow up on how we can improve the bill that I plan to introduce forthwith. Regarding claims processing, I know that we have a huge backlog, and one of the ways that we can speed things up is to use automation as much as possible, and we were able to do that with regard to survivor benefits. And I would ask for your identifying other areas where we can speed up the process through automation so that we can do everything we can to eliminate the claims backlog. So we can have a dialogue with you folks if you can review what we have in place to see where other improvements can be made, because now survivor benefits can be done without everybody having to go through the kind of paperwork that had been required before. For homelessness, that is still a big issue, I would say, for veterans. And we've done our best. We haven't quite gotten to eliminating 100% of the homelessness among veterans, so more to be done. Are there particular aspects of veterans' homelessness that you can help us identify as areas that we need to press forward on? I mean, we did the housing first. That's still a need, but would you like to give us your opinion on this?
Thank you, ma'am.
With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I realize I'm out of time.
spoke briefly, but earlier when we talked about the women veterans, here's another area that, although it's not totally women veterans, predominantly it is. When we have a homeless a female veteran, especially if they have dependents, it is almost impossible unless there's some sort of a child care program at a VA facility. And there's a few pilot programs out there that are working wonderfully. How can you have a homeless a female veteran with dependents come and keep the appointments, come and be able to take care of the counseling, take care of some of the job training, give them that ability to truly be able to return back to the pride that they have burning inside them? That'd be one area right there that we really need to look at, extending and bringing on a child care component to all of the major, certainly the major VA medical centers, to afford those homeless veterans that ability. And the other area is, you know, until a veteran becomes homeless, they aren't homeless. So when we have folks that are on the verge of going homeless, that they've already gotten eviction notices and that, we can't define them as homeless. If they're living with a friend or a relative because they're in a dire situation, they can't take advantage of those benefits because they aren't defined as homeless quite yet. So we need to also look at an opportunity or an ability to say, you know, you're on a trajectory that's not a good one. And we recognize that homelessness is but a short distance away, and we're going to give you the benefits before you are officially, or I guess you meet the official definition of being homeless.
I think that's a good point. Preventing homelessness is really better than once they get to that point. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commander and gentlemen. Thank you for all that you're doing. You know, I strongly believe that your examples of what it means to serve and sacrifice are certainly appreciated by all of us. But I think it's appreciated by all the American people. One of the most powerful things we see every year in the Congress is all of you, this entire body, walking the halls of Congress. It is just powerful, and I love it. So thank you so much for what you're doing. You know, it is kind of like a big family. You know, all of us who have served. I'm proud to say my father was a naval officer. I had 5 uncles and great uncles, all served in World War II. And one of the things I like to remind my own daughters in terms of service is that although you might not be wearing the uniform, you, the VFW, you represent not only the veterans of foreign wars, but the families. So I always like to remind folks, even if you haven't worn a uniform, if you're a spouse or son or daughter of one of you who are in the audience, you're serving your country. You've served your country just like the person wearing the uniform. So I know we've been doing a lot of applauding, but how about we do a round of applause for our family members? I'm going to take the prerogative also to, you know, do a little, we all do our shout out to our state, Alaska. We have an enormous population of veterans. We're a little bit bigger than Connecticut. I don't know if Senator Blumenthal is still here. But if there are any of my VFW brothers and sisters from Alaska who are still in the audience, if you can stand, I'd love to recognize you for a round of applause. There we are. So I wanted to talk about the issue of the transition to civilian employment. And, you know, we talk about homelessness and suicide, and those are all really important areas to focus on. But I think the best way to deal with some of the challenges that we have is to make sure our veterans get good jobs, get good paying jobs. And the last time I was recalled active duty in 2013, I came back to Camp Lejeune. Went through the TAMP classes, and they were pretty good. I had already had a job lined up, so I wasn't that focused on it. I was getting back home to see my wife and daughters. But I think we could do a lot better in this area. And it would be really great, and I know we don't have a lot of time in the hearings, but I know you mentioned it in your initial testimony, but what do you think are the biggest barriers to successful transitions? You know, I've talked to General Kelly about this. You know, if we have veterans who could go into Homeland Security, or our veterans have such great skill sets. They go into, you know, the building trades unions. I mean, what do you see as ways that we can do a much better job? Because whether it's moving into a federal agency, moving into the private sector, moving into state, you know, government-focused areas, and what do you think we can do in Congress to help with that transition and making sure our veterans who leave active duty or leave the reserves with these incredible skill sets, talk about a win-win for the vet, for the employer who's going to hire them. How can we do a better job in that? Because I think we're only scratching the surface, and I think we get good jobs for our veterans. Then we'll start to take care of homelessness and suicide and other things.
Well, the good news is that veteran unemployment is down. That's the good news. But is there more to do? Absolutely. One of the areas is the transition itself, the TAP program. When it was made mandatory, that was good. All the service members, as they transition from active duty back to a civilian career, are required to go through the TAP program.
And are you satisfied with how that's working?
That's where I'm going.
I take it that's a no.
I think, quite honestly, the materials that are being provided are excellent materials to ready these troops as they come back into civilian life. But what we have to be very, very careful of is the way it's delivered. If I'm seeing TAP only at the end of my career, I see it as nothing more than a checklist that needs to be completed so I can get on the bus, or I can get on the airplane, and I can get out of there, and I can go on with life. TAP needs to be seen. TAP needs to be worked throughout the Department of Defense from the day a person puts the uniform on to the day that they take the uniform off. It needs to be a transition the entire way through. We spend so much time training somebody how to enter the military, and we spend so little time training them how to leave the military. And if I could, in regards to when they do leave, and I am so proud. I'm a retired pilot with United Parcel Service, and there's a lot of other great corporations out there that are doing some incredible things to make sure that when veterans do leave, that these large corporations do see the value, do see the skill sets that coming out of the military, and whether they make a transition through getting their higher education prior to then joining and starting a career, or whether they go straight from the military, and many of them are coming out with their degrees already in place. Large corporations are missing an incredible opportunity to grab these highly skilled, mission-oriented individuals. And I'm proud to say, and if I could, sir, recognize with us today, Pat O'Leary, the Veterans Affairs Manager for United Parcel Service, took his own time to come here to be at the hearing.
Well, thank you, Commander. We want to work with you on this. I couldn't agree more. We need to do a lot more. I think it's going to be a win-win. And, you know, in my own experience, I've seen Marines getting out, combat veterans have led Marines in combat, and they get out and they're saying, well, I don't think I have a skill set. And, you know, I've looked at one of my guys saying, I remember saying, you have more skills than a Harvard MBA. Truly. We just got to make sure. We just got to make sure we know how to translate that and get them the jobs that then they can excel in the private sector. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Tester's got a quick follow-up, and then we'll go to Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is very quick. I mentioned in my opening statement that Congress should take its cue from you and the other VSOs. I think Secretary McDonald's done a great job setting the tone for what should be expected, and I think Secretary Shulkin will follow his lead for taking your input and using it to make a difference. Have you or any of your representatives from the VFW personally met with the President?
Personally met with the President?
Yeah.
No, but I sense it's imminent.
You sense it's imminent? Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking the question, because I want it to be imminent. And just very briefly, what would your top priority be when you talk to them?
Sequestration, 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 sequestration.
Good answer.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commander Duffy, thank you for your testimony, for being here. Your leadership and the team that sits to your right and your left. I'm going into my 5th year serving on the House Veterans Affairs Committee. And to the degree that we've been successful and responsive, it is in large part thanks to the guidance and direction that we've received from your team and the members back in Texas, and especially in El Paso, the community I have the honor to serve and to represent. One of the bills that we have written recently, along with Senator Murphy, tries to address the access to mental health gap that we have in so many of our communities. And it's critical in El Paso, Texas, where when we surveyed, more than 1/3 of veterans in our community are unable, even after repeated attempts, to gain a mental health care appointment. And we know that care delayed becomes care denied and has some very negative outcomes, suffering at a minimum and worse in the worst cases. Senator Murphy and I wrote a bill that would ensure that those who have other than honorable discharges are able to immediately access mental health care. VFW was instrumental in providing guidance and feedback on this. I'd love to get your thoughts and those who sit with you on the panel on other ways that we can address the veteran suicide crisis in this country, which I think should be priority number 1 for our VA. I know it's been a priority for the VFW, and I'd love to get your thoughts and your guidance on this.
Thank you, sir. And as you know, that's a special project, not just for the VFW, but for the veteran community and for the community outside of the veterans that I spoke about earlier. One of the areas that I think would be very useful is leveraging, especially in the rural areas, is leveraging telemedicine. Being able to use telemedicine when you can't have a face-to-face session. I think that would be very valuable. But one of the limitations to telemedicine is we have a limitation restriction of interstate telemedicine. So if I have a telemedicine site in the border of Texas and the patient is in Oklahoma, unless they're on federal grounds, we can't use telemedicine for anything, but it would be very useful, I think, in the rural areas to be able to exploit and to use telemedicine in a very positive way. Another one would be to develop a robust peer-to-peer program, similar to hospitals use it for, in the civilian side, they use it for when perhaps they have somebody come in with, what comes to mind quite honestly is a sexual trauma and some other, where the hospitals know that they can call trained peer-to-peer volunteers. I think the same thing could possibly be used to help, and I think it would be possibly very valuable in, again, to get past the limitations, the tyranny of distance in the rural areas, if you could develop a team of a peer-to-peer or a system of peer-to-peer well-trained volunteers. So those are a couple that come to mind off the top of my head, sir.
Let me ask one more question on a different subject, one that you were discussing with Mr. Sullivan as I walked in. The rate of small business ownership by World War II veterans, I think, was just around 50%. The rate of small business ownership among post 9/11 veterans is around 4%. In Houston, Texas, I met with some folks at Combined Arms who really talk about the potential that we can unleash in our veterans community in creating more jobs. Met with Bunker Labs in Austin, Texas, which are already starting veterans on an entrepreneurial path. Your thoughts on using post 9/11 GI Bill benefits to allow veterans to start businesses, or other ways that we unleash that entrepreneurship in the veterans community?
As far as using the post 9/11 GI Bill for an entrepreneurial, we'd have to study that. But right off the top of my head, I would be very fearful that there would be some predatory grabs on those on that particular program. Boy, we need to really study that one. But The hair on the back of my head says no, no. Post 9/11 GI Bill was there for the purpose of higher education. I think there's other ways to do that through the Small Business Administration, to start programs there to add to the catalog of what's available to veterans. But to use the post 9/11 GI Bill as a way to fund an entrepreneurial experiment, no.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your feedback. And again, thanks for being here, your advocacy and your leadership. And I will yield back to the chair or the ranking member.
Senator Cassidy.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you all for being here. First, let me give a shout out to my people from Louisiana. Thank you all for being here. Can you all stand up or let me know where you are? Thank you all. And knowing that it's been said, I thank you all for holding your 2017 National Convention in New Orleans. You'll have a great time, fantastic time. I spoke with the folks from Louisiana yesterday regarding mental health, and I gather that that's been something which has already been discussed here. I'm not sure what I am particularly interested in has been discussed. I gather that there is a disparity between different VA medical centers in the quality of service that is rendered. So in one place it's top-notch, and in another place not so much. Now, as we know, quality should move towards a common point. And the fact that there is variability, and in some places, the veteran, if he shows up 30 minutes late, is rebooked 3 hours later, as opposed to in another place, they actually accommodate him later that same day. I say that because in my state, sometimes veterans will drive an hour and a half to get to their appointment. If there is a wreck on the freeway, they may not arrive on time. First, let me ask you if you have any kind of data from your members of any sort of variability as regards mental health services, in particular at VAs across the nation.
Senator, thank you for the question. You're absolutely right. There is disparity among VA medical facilities, and that should be eliminated. In our report, we see that 60% of veterans have noticed an improvement, but there's 40 that say they haven't, and things need to improve. So VA is looking at the right things. They have a access initiative to grant same-day appointments for urgent primary care and mental health care. That's the right approach. That needs to continue. But more than anything, it needs to be consistent and standardized throughout the system. And it's not quite there, but we will hold VA accountable and ensure that they continue that work.
Are you polling periodically, or is that a one-time poll? For example, well, we know that in Kansas City it's doing great, and Spokane, I'm just picking cities, it's not doing well, but a year from now both are doing better, or no, you've done a point in time?
We do point in time, but we do track locations. I don't have specific locations that have stood out, but we could work with your staff to identify some of those.
We're trying to look at the data the VA makes publicly available. Mm-hmm. Again, once folks are accountable, I've learned that they're just more likely to perform at a higher level. Not that they're doing poorly, but we all do better when we think somebody is kind of watching us. So if y'all have ways to help us improve that sort of monitoring, we would appreciate you speaking to us. My Louisiana folks know how to reach me. With that, Mr. Chair, I know it's a long meeting. Thank you all for your service, and whatever we can do to help you as you help other veterans, we would appreciate that opportunity. I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Cassidy. And at this time, I will yield 5 minutes to Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, if I can see the hands of our California folks here today. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your service to our country. I wanted to ask a quick question. I was in California. One of my primary goals was to make sure that California contracts, public works contracts, that there would be a set aside for veteran contracts, and I always wanted to make sure that the state actually followed the law. Question for you, gentlemen, in terms of assuring that we have economic activity and job creation through entrepreneurship for the veterans, do you see any of those efforts needed at the federal level?
Sir, we always support any program that hires veterans. We obviously would like to see it start right here in Congress, to the extent possible.
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't hear you. What was that?
To the extent possible, we support veteran hiring, and to the extent possible, we would like to see Congress itself take the lead. And many of, I know, the folks in Congress serving, and much of the staff are veterans, and we thank you for that. But we always think that there's opportunities to hire more veterans here in District of Columbia, here obviously in the House and the Senate. And I think, quite honestly, what an example that would set if we increase the amount of hiring of veterans right here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I'll now yield time to Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your service. I'm proud as Army and Marine Corps veteran and a veteran of the First Gulf War and Iraq War as well to be a lifetime member of the VFW. Thank you. Thank you. So, my question, I do have legislation before you that we'll send to you concerning veteran mental health. And the fundamental issue is that during the course of my career, I witnessed two reduction in forces. One in the aftermath of Vietnam, and then another in the aftermath of the First Gulf War. So about 74 time frame, 1974 time frame, and then about 91, 92 time frame. And in both there were orderly reductions. In other words, on the junior enlisted side, it was essentially that you were not eligible for reenlistment, but you received an honorable discharge and went your way. On the officer's side, probably in post-Vietnam, if you didn't have a college degree, that was kind of a dividing line. That if you were if you were a prior NCO, you reverted back to that rank. If not, you were just out. Post First Gulf War, essentially officers that were pushed out were given priority in the reserves and were given some sort of cash payment on the way out. And junior enlisted were denied reenlistment, or NCOs were denied reenlistment based on the competitives. We're doing something very different today in the military, and that on oftentimes, too many times, what are minor infractions. Our combat veterans coming back from tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan are given other than honorable discharges, and they are denied treatment for the VA, even mental health treatment from the VA. And when we talk about veteran suicides and other issues, I think we could trace it back to some of this stuff. And let me tell you, when I was junior enlisted, or when I in the Army, or junior officer in the Marine Corps, nobody ever would have been discharged for basically non-judicial issues, Article 15 or office hours or whatever you want to call them. And so that's our case. That's the case today, and it's a way of thinning the ranks in the middle of somebody's enlistment. And so what this legislation does, I think it's a Veteran Access to Mental Health Care Act, but we'll get you the exact number of it. And it essentially says this. It says that we will not deny a veteran, a combat veteran, or a victim of sexual assault, or someone who say that with PTSD due to the drone program, that has any record of PTSD, that we will not deny them mental health care. And so I think that's been very important, and I need the support from your organization on that issue, and I wonder if you could comment on that.
Thank you very much. And Carlos is going to speak to a little bit in detail. Well, let me tell you that the premises you entered that with, there is absolutely no reason, no excuse that force reduction should be used as the catalyst, the rationale for putting somebody out on bad paper. If you're putting somebody out on bad paper because what you're really doing is trying to downsize to reach some goal that the DOD has put in front of you, that is incredibly unfair, especially to somebody that has put their life on the line.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And are there other comments on it? Yeah.
Congressman, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for your leadership on the Fairness for Veterans Act.
Sure, fair.
And thank you for getting it past that finish line in the NDAA. And I know as your position on the Personnel Subcommittee, you're going to hold DOD accountable to make sure that they follow through with that. So thank you for that. We certainly support improving access to these folks. We're working with VA now to amend its regulations because VA has the authority to grant them eligibility for health care and benefits. We're pushing them to make sure that they issue those regulations, and we will work with you and your staff to make sure these folks have access to the health care that they have earned and deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you.
If I can add to that, especially when it comes to somebody that suffered from sexual trauma.
Sure.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Kaufman, I have a former constituent in my district who is a Medal of Honor winner who received a less than honorable discharge. And this was after World War I. I'm going to try, it's hard to believe, but that actually happened. And I think he probably had PTSD and he hit an officer and was discharged dishonorably. And this man, I think, won more medals than Sergeant York did in Tennessee. It's from Morristown, Tennessee. And I'm going to try to get that reversed. Yeah, no kidding. I would, at this point in time, I want to take just a minute or two and apologize for the House side of keeping you all here. We've been involved in an hour and a half worth of votes, and we couldn't get out of that. So I want to apologize and give you my opening remarks as briefly as I can. And it's an honor and privilege for me to be here with Ranking Member Tester's gone and Waltz to welcome you all today to our joint hearing of the House and Senate Veterans Affairs Committee to receive the legislative presentation of the VFW. Thank you all for your brave and honorable service to our nation, our service that continues through your work with the VFW and your attendance here in Washington today. I want to extend a special welcome to Commander-in-Chief Brian Duffy and his wife, Jean. Welcome, Commander. Thank you, sir, for your years of service to the United States Air Force, for your leadership within the VFW, and for being here to share your wisdom with all of us today. And I want to welcome the VFW Auxiliary National President, Ms. Colette Bishop. Welcome. Ma'am, thank you for being here and all the good work you've done and all the work the Auxiliary does for our veterans and their families. I'd also like to recognize the VFW members from my home state of Tennessee who are in the audience today. If you would, please stand or raise your hand if you're here and be recognized. It looks like we have some fellow Methodists. They're in the back, like I am, in the back of the audience. I am grateful not only to have you here this morning, but today, but also to work for the work the VFW and Auxiliary do across this country every day in service to our veterans and their families. I'm also grateful for the hard work the VFW does right here in our nation's capital. The legislative wing of VFW is a trusted partner in informing Congress and crafting legislation to drive constant improvement and increased accountability at VA. I was pleased to learn that Ranking Member Waltz has brought on the former director of VFW's National Legislative Service, Ray Kelly, to serve as staff director for the House VA Committee on the Minority Side. And Ray, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today on the dais. Through your participation in roundtable discussions and providing materials for hearing and other activities, VFW's insights and frontline knowledge of the VA healthcare system continue to assist veterans struggling to receive VA care in a timely manner and inform the committee where improvements are still needed. Commander-in-Chief Duffy, I greatly appreciate your thought and your thorough and comprehensive testimony in today's hearing. In it, you've touched on about every aspect VA health care and benefits. I'm pleased to see support for so many initiatives I have been advocating strongly for, such as a consolidation of the choice with other community care programs, using provider agreements to fill gaps where VA cannot offer certain types of health care, improving VA's aging IT infrastructure, and the inclusion of a strong network of women-specific health care within VA. As a veteran and a private OBGYN practitioner who took care of health care needs of female veterans for the Mountain Home VA Medical Center in Johnson City, Tennessee, I'm acutely aware of the specific health needs of female veterans and will be working to see those needs are met. As I begin this journey as chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, I will be looking to VFW for insight and guidance. VFW's membership surveys provide comprehensive quantitative data that will help frame the big picture of how our nation's heroes receive the care and benefits that they've earned. I'm confident that working together with nearly 1.7 million members of VFW and your auxiliaries, there will be no challenge that can't be met on behalf of our veterans. With that, I thank you once again. And now I'd like to recognize, I know you all have been here a long time, so I'm going to, the three most dreaded words any politician can say is I'll be brief. I'm going to now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Waltz.
Well, thank you all, and thank you. I concur with the chairman. Your patience is greatly appreciated. But you did witness something as rare as seeing a Sasquatch. That was the Senate waiting on the House, which rarely happens. So, Commander, congratulations to you. Thank you, as always, for your voice. I often say, and we're having the privilege of having our VSOs here this week, when you've got the national commander and the leadership and the folks behind you, it's an impressive sight, and it acts as the conscience of this nation. So we are grateful you're here. To the Minnesotans, are there still a few left, or do they head back? If they're here, oh, there we go. So welcome. We're glad to have you. Thank you, folks. And I would say, Commander, you're absolutely right. I'd like to give thanks to this whole group up here who's members of this, but Jeff Denham from California, myself, back when we started here in Congress, and the need and the high unemployment rate amongst veterans, the House Jobs Caucus, making sure we were focusing on that. We took that to heart when we hired Ray Kelly, and Carlos, you are welcome. Now you had a job. So, but it speaks volumes for the work that you do. It speaks volumes for your leadership. I often say, as dues-paying members to organizations, you wonder where your dues go. They go to putting the best people forward that help us make policy for veterans. And without you, those things would not happen. So, Commander, I appreciate your call to hire veterans. It's not only the right thing to do, you will not be sorry, because the quality of work that you get is well worth it. So we appreciate that. I just have one question, and again, I'm always grateful. You're a very data-driven organization. And Bob, I know we've talked over the years on that you have to know what the problem is before you can solve it. You did a great service again by letting us see what veterans are thinking. And I thought this was interesting, because there's two stories in this. How would you improve VA healthcare systems? And the choices we're giving: fix the deficiencies, dismantle, universal healthcare card, or unable to categorize. It was overwhelmingly fix the deficiencies. Did they list any of those things that they'd like fixed? One or two things. If someone came up with that, was that data disaggregated to the point where we know maybe what they were talking about that came up a lot?
Yes, Congressman, there were a number of issues that were highlighted of things that need to be improved. Certainly access was the number one thing: hiring more doctors, decreasing wait time and travel, customer service, streamlining processes and systems that are just either complex or don't make sense. The phone system came up a couple times. Veterans just want to be able to get to the right place and fast.
Does it come back to, if they can get in without a hassle and get to the right place, they're pretty satisfied? That's fair to say? Great. Well, again, I appreciate all the work you hear. All of those coming, thank you for that. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and now as a former captain and barely made major, I've got to yield to a lieutenant general, which is pretty easy to do. General Bergman, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hey.
And if you want to take 3.5, General, it'll be okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody here from Michigan? All right. Any Marines in the crowd? A little louder. Hoorah! Come on, guys. You're not getting that old. Well, I tell you what, folks, you know what, and it's important because, you know, age plays a factor. And I will ask you one rhetorical question here is that whether you're the VFW, the American Legion, multiple service organizations, you have a challenge in increasing your membership with the young folks, the young veterans coming back. And I know you're looking at that, and anything that we can do here to just provide maybe comic relief in some areas to entice them to come to a meeting. But the idea is that our future is based upon who we bring in at the next levels. You've all served honorably. Thank you for what you've done. Question. What is more important from a VFW perspective? Receiving top quality health care or receiving health care strictly through the VA hospital system?
Sir, when we have the ability, when accessibility is not a question, quality health care from the VA is always there. So I'm really not sure I understand your question. The VA does provide quality care. It's a matter of accessibility at times.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, it not is always accessible, but the important thing is if you're on the battlefield, do you care who bandages your wounds? No. You need to have it accessible and need to have it accessible now. And as this panel looks at, as the challenges we have, as the subcommittee chairman on investigations and oversight on the Veterans Affairs Committee, we're going to be asking some tough questions because you ask tough questions of us, we're going to ask tough questions of everybody else because we're all in this together. And oh, by the way, I'll just conclude by saying thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're going to do tomorrow. And what you're looking at is the son of a World War II Navy vet who my dad and a couple of his buddies started Warren Butler Post 6212 in Savage, Minnesota in 1946. And when I came back from Vietnam, my dad signed me up as a life member in that same post. So I'm with you. God bless you all. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, General. Always rely on a Marine and a general to ask a hard question, Commander. I'll now yield 3 minutes to Ms. Custer. You're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the General, who's the chair of our Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee. And I, too, want to commend hiring military veterans. I'm very proud of my Marine, Kevin Diamond, who's doing a great job keeping me on the up and up, and I appreciate his hard work. A couple of things I just want to dive in. My time is short. I want to pick up on this question that the General has raised because we had a Veterans Town Hall in my district in New Hampshire. The northern part of the state, it's a rural part of the state, so access is the issue that we deal with. And there was a long testimony actually by the wife of a veteran who cared a great deal on her husband's behalf about the camaraderie from getting services through the VA. And she talked a lot about how the people within the VA, many of them veterans themselves, the caregivers. And so I'm just going to set up a couple of things that I'm concerned about heading into the months ahead with the new administration, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Number one, as I said to these folks in New Hampshire, my goal is to make sure that as many veterans as possible do get their care in the VA, literally in the four walls of the VA, whether that's a CBOC or a hospital setting, that we work with the VA. We're working on a particular pilot that might help in other places that's going to be patient-managed care, where they can't physically get to the VA, but they use local care, but it's managed by the VA nurses so that they can be followed, and frankly, that the bills will get paid to the provider. That's a big issue for us. But I'm concerned about moving the care outside of the VA and the possibility of budget cuts, given what we heard last night. There's going to be a lot of spending around here on other things, and I'm very worried about the veterans getting their care. And then finally, the freeze that we have right now, the hiring freeze, is a real problem because even though there's an exemption for some of the types of employees, it's not for all of the employees that might be necessary to provide high-quality care. So 36 seconds, if you could cover it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
In regards to the hiring freeze, I had an opportunity to speak yesterday with Secretary Shulkin, and we spoke on that very subject. And he explained to me the way that the VA is affected by that. And we're satisfied that those areas that deal with interaction with the veterans are not affected. So we're satisfied in that area. In regards to the camaraderie and you know, we think that the more you put, and we spoke in your comment, and I appreciate that you have a veteran with you there, a Marine. It seems like the Marines are taking over the back.
I don't want to start a rumble in this room now.
But the more that you can bring veterans into the employment of the VA itself, I think the more you're going to gain the quality and the empathy and the understanding that only veterans can bring to fellow veterans, that they've been there, they've done that those that are well-meaning, that perhaps aren't veterans, can learn so much from those that are veterans in employment. So the more that we can increase veterans as employees of the VA, I think a natural byproduct of that will be increased quality of the care, and again, the empathy versus apathy, which unfortunately from time to time is the other choice.
Great. Well, that's certainly my goal. And I also want to commend you all on the gender specific and including that in your priorities. Representative Walorski, Representative Brownlee, and myself are very focused on this, and we look forward to working with you. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady, for yielding back. I think what you're saying, Commander, is it's the culture. It's the same reason I get up every morning and check my gig line. They just do. Sorry. Still do. Mr. Rutherford, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want folks to know I am a first-time congressman from Northeast Florida, which has a very large veteran population. So anybody from Florida, please stand so I can see you. Wave back. Oh, look at here. God bless y'all. God bless y'all. Thank you. And Commander Duffy, I want to thank you for that very comprehensive study that Mr. Waltz mentioned earlier, Our Care 2017. And I want to read just one paragraph, and then I want to put it in the context of a committee meeting, a subcommittee meeting that we had just week before last. And the paragraph out of your report says deficiencies that veterans identified, and that's at 92%, identified deficiencies as the problem, said that they were regarding a shortage of healthcare providers, inadequate customer service, waiting too long or having to travel too far for their care, and bureaucratic processes and systems which don't make much sense to them. In our subcommittee meeting just week before last, the GAO had issued a report on official time that union members at the VA facilities, where they actually are able to conduct union business for the AFGE on government time. They discovered doctors, a doctor at least, paid $212,000 a year, who in the previous year spent 100% of his time on official time doing union business. Now that means 100% of his time was dedicated to something other than serving the men and women in this room who he's hired to serve. That seems like a travesty to me. Then I asked Ms. McLeod from the VA, I said, look, the total number of official time hours that were used last year, they don't know what the number is, but they guesstimate, GAO guesstimated, because they really don't know, 1.3 million hours. And so my first question is, well, what's the official pool? How many hours are they allowed to take? No one on that panel knew the answer. Not the, or at least they wouldn't give the answer. The VA representative did not know the answer. The head of AFGE did not know the answer. And that is a travesty. So what I want to commit to you all today is that we're going to get to the bottom of this official time that I know from this report is taking away from your care that you should be receiving at these VA facilities. And I think Mr. Waltz touched on this earlier. Commander, if you know of any other travesties like this, if you could point those out to us, I guarantee you the chairman and this committee will absolutely go after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Rutherford.
If we can allow Mr. Duffy to answer if he needs to, but.
You know, our staff is constantly, I mean, that's why we exist. We're a veteran service organization. We will constantly, the product that we have, the widget that we can give to you as members of Congress is our advocacy. So we will forever, to the last VFW member, always be very vigilant to make sure we're doing everything to make sure that you have all the information that you need for oversight and for providing the benefits that the veterans have earned.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor.
I yield back.
Mr. Pollockman, you're recognized 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Maine is a small state. I represent one of the most rural districts in America. We got some Mainers here. Who's from Maine? Is that Pete? Who's down there? Where's Pete Meisberger? Pete, you there? Okay. Now, I know, Mr. Chairman, we've got Florida, New York, and Tennessee, and Virginia. We've got Maine here, and Maine is one tough state, and we love our veterans.
I know it is because I ruptured a disc hiking in that state this year.
Well, you probably get great service at the VA, sir. We're going to make sure that continues. But I'll tell you, we are very proud of our veterans in Maine, and we love them. We do not have a country, Mr. Commander. We do not have a country unless we get folks like you to stand up and serve. You give us our freedom, our liberties, and I have a 26-year-old son who I really worry about, but I worry less every time I meet a veteran. I really appreciate everybody being in this room. You know, we are counting on you folks to speak up. I'm new to this committee. We need you folks who are on the ground to tell us what the problems are so we can fix them. For example, we found out last year that our WASPs, our women pilots from the Second World War, were being denied burial facilities, opportunities over at Arlington if they so wished. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine our fighter pilots from the Second World War teaching men how to fly, flying with aerial targets? Hopefully the men wouldn't hit them. Being denied burial services. Well, I'll tell you, Martha McSally, who is a veteran and one tough cookie that flew A-10s, I believe, over in the Middle East, she led the charge. I joined in with others, and now we have fixed that problem. But we count on you folks to speak up. I am very worried, representing rural parts of our state, about access to health care by our veterans that live in rural areas. We have fixed that problem in northern Maine, where we've extended a pilot program where our veterans in Aroostook County can get their health care services locally instead of driving 5 hours down to Togus in Augusta when the snow's blowing sideways and they're not feeling well. Now, I know we've got to continue to support, Mr. Chairman, the VA, because veterans love to spend time with veterans and they heal better. And it's a great way to take care of our veterans. But if there are pragmatic, practical ways to get our service, our healthcare services in rural areas, we want to do that. And I would really appreciate you folks speaking up if you find that we are off track. I will close by saying the following. There is change coming through this town. We have a new administration with a majority in Congress that are huge supporters of the military, and we will make sure we'll do everything humanly possible to make sure our military is fully funded so they can defend our freedom and win when they're called upon.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'll now yield myself 3 minutes. You know, I grew up in the military town, Clarksville, Tennessee, where the 101st Airborne is. My scoutmaster was a first sergeant in the 101st Airborne, so I'd already been through basic training 3 or 4 times by the time I went to do basic training. I trained, my medical training, part of it was at a VA hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. After that, like many of you out there, look, we're about the same vintage. I went to the mailbox and won a free trip to Southeast Asia. All expense paid, and so I was a battalion surgeon in the 2nd Infantry Division at Camp Casey, Camp Bradley, later in Seoul. I moved my family to East Tennessee. I saw patients from the VA hospital, so I think I understand, and the thing that I'm going to focus like a laser beam on is not bureaucracy, but it's quality of care for veterans. That's what I faced. I've tried to do my entire life for my patients, and now 21 million veterans in this country are my patients. And as a chairman of this committee, I want to be sure that we do everything we can to provide the best quality of care for patients anywhere in a timely fashion. That's what I'd like to see. Very briefly, and this is, I want to ask you guys this, and this is a bit of frustration for me. Since 2001, we've almost quadrupled the Congress. I got here in 2009, and Mr. Waltz got here a term or so before. But we've gone from the time I got here from spending $97 billion, that's a lot of money, to almost $180 billion. We've increased the VA's size from 260,000 employees to now over 360,000 employees. It's bigger than the U.S. Navy. And I don't believe it's that much better. So we've got to figure out how to streamline, and as Mr. Rutherford was saying, put the emphasis on what the VA should be doing, which is taking care of people, timely taking care of claims. I have a friend of mine who died 2 years ago. One of the best friends I'll ever have on this earth, died of a very rare lymphoma. He applied for benefits a year before that when we found out he had the diagnosis. He's been dead for 2 years. It still isn't resolved for his widow. And I see that. It's heartbreaking. I hear stories that go on and on and on. And so what I need your help to do is to, as Mr. Poliquin was talking about, is to point out these things that we see, that you see, that we can be helpful. And I can tell you in a bipartisan way, this committee will try its best to do it. I give you my solemn promise. And it's, as my tenure here goes on, that is my mission. So you understand that the VFW, and I can't thank you enough, it's a huge organization, our state of Tennessee. You guys do an incredible job for veterans there, and I want to thank you for that. And I'll now yield. I'm through with questions. Anyone else? Yes, Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, just wanted to emphasize again a comment I made yesterday, which is you folks here are our eyes and ears when it comes to benefits. If you don't step up and tell us what the VA is doing right or what they're not doing right, then it's going to take a while for us to figure that out. So please, folks in California have an open door policy. If you see anything, you let us know. And as a good chairman here has said, and our vice chairman, we're on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou. And now I'll yield to Mr. Waltz for closing comments.
Just closing comment, one question I'd like to say again, thanking the chairman. We're very lucky as veterans to have him in this seat. He's got the full confidence of this entire committee, and I hope he has the confidence. I think he's exactly right. We should know what we're getting for our money. We should know where that money's going. We should know if it's getting better. We should be able to measure those things. I guess the question I would ask, and this is the one I think I would like to know this too, we together and the Congress by Article 1 should be making these decisions. So I'm a bit troubled on the hiring freeze. And I will tell you this, if you want to know one thing that irritates constituents more than anything, when they think Congress plays by a different rule. Apparently we are, because I was able to hire Ray, so there was no hiring freeze. No one said anything about that. And the point is that was a veteran looking for work. If the VA needs to hire people, then we should be there overseeing that and allow them to do that if they need to do it. If they don't, then we should tell them not to hire and they're not going to do it. I think an arbitrary hiring freeze makes me nervous that if there are positions we need to be filled and we cannot do that, that poses a problem. And I think it runs counter because the Chairman is exactly right. If we have spent that much more, we better be dang sure we got our money's worth for it, and that's what we need you to help us with. So I would just ask you to think about that one. Let us know on that. Let us know where you're seeing the hiring freeze either hurting in processing of claims or some of the support positions in healthcare. And Ray was just mentioning, and I wanted to mention it, maybe point them out on here. Commander, if you can yourself or one of your staff tell us about your fellowship program. We got some fellows here.
I thank you, yes. We've got a very close alliance with Student Veterans of America, and this is the third year that the student veterans are joining us, the fellowship, to allow them the opportunity to go with the VFW members, to come up on the Hill, to visit with their representatives, to learn more, and to also engage on particular issues that they're working with. And some of them are actually taking these issues and they're getting credit for it. So can I ask the fellow Student Veterans of America, please stand to be recognized.
Who? Hey. As always, leading by example. Thanks for getting them involved, and they know and believe they can make a difference. With that, I yield back.
Thanks, gentlemen, for yielding. And I want to express actually agreement with what my colleague said. I wrote the letter to the President about exempting the VA from the hiring freeze, and it was signed by many other people, and certainly they responded very quickly. The Trump administration was just out of the chute. They've exempted it, and certainly in critical care areas where physicians and other nursing and other specialties like that were exempted, and I appreciate them responding quickly, and they did. Commander, I want to thank you and all of the people, the veterans who came today from literally all across the country, and especially the fellowship students. I think that is a phenomenal program that you have. I think you have the commitment of both Democrats and Republicans on this committee to work together for what's in the best interest of veterans. You have no question in my mind about that, and I certainly relish in my new role as chairman and look forward to working with you. And again, you're our eyes and ears out there. We can only be in a few places. You guys are and gals are all over the United States. So thank you very much, and I want to thank all of you all for coming. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and add extraneous material. And hearing no objections, so ordered. The hearing is adjourned.
Good job. Let me go up and thank him.